Hey there, welcome back to I Planted Again. My name is Courtney, and in today's video, we're gonna try to fix one of my plant fails. This is a Scindapsus pictus. It starts with an A, I forget. I'm honestly boggled by this plant at the moment. So I made a video, I think it was one of my first videos on here where I wanted to turn this plant into a climbing plant on a wall that I have downstairs, like kind of in my kitchen. And this is what it looks like now. I mean, it's just, there's a lot of issues with this plant, and I kind of want to go over what I think those issues are and what I'm gonna do to fix it and hopefully maybe save a couple pieces in this plant. We'll see. So you just saw me take down the plant in all of its glory, and here are the remnants. I mean, it's just awful. So there's yellowing and there's browning. The stems really aren't giving. They're not giving. So I think this happened for a few reasons. One, I think that the placement of the plant didn't allow it to get a lot of light. And I think that's probably the number one reason, because I've had other plants die on that counter that did not have pests. There weren't any watering issues, and they just like yellowed and died. So I think it's the light, that it wasn't getting enough light. I think that's pretty much the major issue. The next issue I feel like is underwatering. So I'm a chronic underwaterer. I tend to not necessarily forget, but I go long periods of time in between watering because I used to be an overwaterer when I first started with houseplants. So now I'm like, oh, I don't want to water it until it's like almost dead, which I feel like this plant did not like at all. The next issue I think was due to it being kind of close to a draft, which I didn't really think about at the time. But yeah, I think that's the third major issue that has occurred. And it's just, yeah. So normally what I do when I have a plant that looks like this, the first thing I'm gonna check for is pests, which I have been frequently checking, and there's no pest. It's just dying because I think of all those other issues. Yeah, it looks terrible, and we're gonna try to rescue it. So I'm actually going to refocus the camera so we can see exactly what we're doing with this plant. So my head will be chopped off for the next, probably for the rest of the video.
So the first thing we are doing is, I'm saying we, like it's not just me in a room by myself. The first thing I am doing is trying to see what pieces I can actually save from this plant. As you can tell, it's giving nothing. It's giving very little, and a lot of the stems are not great. They're kind of savable, but there really isn't that much that I can save. But I am showing you what pieces I am gonna save and how we're gonna make this work. So now we're getting to the fun part, and the piece of wood that you see me using is not cedar wood. Cedar wood is the proper wood to use for something like this, and that's because it helps protect the plant's roots and seal in moisture, because it's gonna break down over time and add nutrients into the soil. So you wanna use cedar wood. That's not what I had available. I'm just using this wood that I picked up from Lowe's. And basically what I am envisioning is using the moss just on the front part of the wood and wrapping it with some twine and kind of making a makeshift moss pole. But I wanted it to be flat because I really want to see this plant shingle and not just climb. So that was like my vision for fixing this plant and getting it to look better, because at this point it's just like, what do I have to lose? You know, plants are just about experimenting and doing things and trying new things and seeing how they work out. And if they don't work out, I'm still going to share. And if they do work out, I'm definitely going to share. But the method that I used to like put this moss on the pole, I would not advise. I had some moss that I was reusing, and what you should do is dump it in a bucket, moisten the moss properly, and then just pull from the bucket, and it would lay a lot easier on the piece of wood. But I didn't have like a free clean bucket to do this. I was just feeling really lazy and didn't do it. So I just threw the moss on there and then wet it with a paper towel, or wet it with a spray bottle, and then kind of like squeezed it to like not have a ton of moisture. But don't do it like this. This is the lazy, difficult way of doing it. I just really wanted to get this plant fixed because it's just been staring me in the eye for way too long. And I was just trying to get it fixed as soon as possible. Now you're seeing me wrap the cotton twine around the entire pole, and I'm doing this to keep it in place because I want to make sure that not much of it is moving around a lot. The point is for it to be as stable as possible, and that's where the cotton twine comes in to really just reinforce that connection between the wood and the moss. And I'm really hoping this moss, you know, helps this plant and it connects to it and it like gives a shingle vibe. That's what I'm envisioning to happen for this plant. And now we're refilling our pot with some fresh soil mix, and this is just garden soil, perlite, orchid mix, and a little bit of leca. And now I'm positioning the moss board into the pot with the soil and trying to make it as stable as I possibly can by making sure that that soil is moist. Because sometimes I forget when I'm repotting to moisten the soil, like that first layer of soil. Sometimes I forget and I don't water until the very end, but it's really good to do it while you're filling up the pot to really help spread out that all that goodness for the plant. And now we finally made it. We're putting together all of the pieces that we have for this plant that will hopefully attach to the moss board and just look really amazing. And I'm taking my time in placing each piece as good as I possibly can to just make sure that most of the pieces are as close to the moss board as possible, because I want them to attach. But there's like a few pieces that just they weren't gonna get there like they needed to, so I kind of just let them hang out of the front, and you'll see that here while we are moving through this process. It didn't actually take me that long, but I am glad that I did choose to repot this instead of like throw it in the trash, because honestly it's my fault that it even ended up like this. I really think the lighting for this plant was not optimal. It wasn't even not optimal, it just wasn't good at all. And I'm hoping that moving it to my plant room, which will be its final destination, will help improve, especially because I also have a humidifier in there. So yeah, I'm hoping that'll work out really well. And this strip that you see me using to adhere like the plant to the board is amazing. I love this. It's like garden tape. I'll link it in the description box below. It's like this garden tape. It's Velcro, which I love because it's reusable and it's adjustable. Like cotton twine is what I was using a lot before to attach to my plants to moss poles or whatever I was doing, and it was so hard to work with because it was just really challenging to work with. It wouldn't stick well. I would never measure it correctly, and then it's kind of like you couldn't even take it apart. You would have to cut it off and then you just kind of throw it away because it's kind of useless. That's why I really love this this garden tape, and I have been using it for a while. I think I've had it at least for 2 months, and I'm not even close to running out because I reuse a lot of pieces if I'm moving plants around. And I just think it works really, really well. So we're just attaching one strip of the garden tape with the plant attached to the moss board because it's honestly not that high. There's not a lot of plant action going on because there was a lot of deadness. So we're doing what we can to save this plant. And now we're just going back in, filling in with soil and making sure that everything is properly covered so that it can get all the nutrients and grow really big and beautiful. I really think this is going to work out. I really think this is going to be really good for this plant, and I think it's going to look good too. And here is the plant in my plant room, and it looks so good. I love it. It's really small right now, obviously, because it was kind of a rehab at this point, but I have really high hopes, and I think it's going to turn out amazing, and I will absolutely do an update video for you very soon. And I want to thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.